So ladies, gentlemen, fellow devils of Hell's Kitchen, welcome to my Daredevil Born Again Episode 3 recap, review, and breakdown. And man, this episode, I found it, I don't know about you, because I know there's quite a range of opinions on Daredevil at the minute, but I found it to be a very entertaining one, and I'm curious to see if that's going to be the case across the board, given that, sometimes for people, not having the titular character suit up or having, any action is often, I guess you could say, on paper, an off-putting thing in a vigilante show. But what we have to remember is that Matt Murdock is a lawyer, after all. And he's on the deemed, I think they said last episode, near impossible case of defending Hector Ayala. And as a result of that, if you do Daredevil right, or as close to right as possible, you also have to do Matt Murdock, the lawyer, correctly as well. And I'm happy to say that, what made this episode very entertaining to me is that this was a pretty damn powerful one. Of course, this episode was very feelsy in of itself, but of course, at the same time, we did have the tragic passing of Kamar de los Reyes, who plays White Tiger, and he passed away in 2023. And, watching this episode, he did an incredible job here as Hector, White Tiger. I don't want to come across like I'm glazing the crap out of this, but I'd like to think that if you're in this for more than just the, pew-pew vigilante action of it all, and I'm not saying you're wrong for wanting that. I want that as well. That all while, and don't get me wrong, while this episode took a bit of a break from advancing the overall main story in crazy leaps, I'd like to think that maybe if you're still watching and you've watched episode 3, it will restore faith that the series, at least I would like to believe after watching episode 3 now, still instills good story material for them to play around with. One that is emotionally impacting. And I think emotional resonance with an audience is so important and key to be attached to a series. And for me, that kind of content is king. Without me rambling too much more, let's actually get into the recap and breakdown of this. We pick up with Matt visiting Hector, talking about his home, with Matt promising that he'll see that beach again, hear the frogs again. Now, professionally, you probably shouldn't make that promise, but at the same time, it's a very nice sentiment. And Matt's insistence here and confidence, knowing that they have the witness, probably gives him the conviction to make that promise. But, just cutting to the credits, hearing the beach. I don't know how many of you stick around for the credits, but that's what we could hear when it cut to black, especially with the religious theme of Daredevil, guys. One would like to think that Hector saw that beach again, but I'm getting way ahead of myself here, and I can't cast myself into that pit of sadness this early on into the review. Now, after the intro, we then see the somewhat, I would like to say, simmering storyline introduced this episode with Fisk and the criminal element of New York scrapping amongst each other with that truck hijacking. We then swiftly see Fisk dining with Vanessa, and the whole Vanessa Fisk storyline is an interesting one. And I like psychoanalytically seeing what's going on here, as if I'm Heather counseling them. But no, really, you see Vanessa talking about, I could do a bit of washing, maybe wash $200 million through this sale opportunity. But Fisk kind of talks about how he's reaching for higher goals. Clearly, Vanessa, which they set up in the first couple of episodes, wants the more organized crime life. She clearly found her stride managing the criminal empire for Fisk while he was away. And this is when Vanessa even says that the gangs are misbehaving because no one is at the head of the table. And without Vanessa there or Fisk there, they're going to eventually turn on each other. And we know that Kingpin's attention and his mission as mayor is certainly off track in terms of what he used to have in his tunnel vision. So he's kind of just let them kill each other. But this could, as per what Vanessa is saying, I do think this is foreshadowing for something that will come to bite him in the ass. Even what we see a little bit later on, guys. We see that Vanessa sends Buck to go and meet some of those gang leaders because of that shootout at the port, which is also just the latest in a long line of things that keeps happening like this. And, there's two big takeaways that is coming out of this. A, that Vanessa did this behind Fisk's back when he's just let him kill each other. But also, we had Buck saying it all ends today, but one of those gang leaders even pipes up, which is so sketchy because if they truly feared the Kingpin, right, Wilson Fisk, he probably wouldn't do that. I know some criminals, have their egos, but still. Which, despite the dead silence in the room where Fisk first entered in episode 1, this just does show that the time that is already passing, he's losing his grip if people and gangs are piping up like that. So when we're back with Fisk later on in counseling with Heather, before Heather comes in, Fisk can tell, he asks her to talk to him as he knows that she's been up to something, and she does admit that she sent Buck to pay $1.8 million in restitution for the hijacking, just to kind of keep the peace, right? And because of this, he warns her to not fall into a place where he can't trust her. And Vanessa, on her side, just doesn't want to see everything she's maintained for him fall apart. But Fisk is just kind of like, sometimes chaos must reign to build a stronger order. Now, I'm sure Fisk's angle there is to kind of let this shit unfold, gangs and murder and gang violence and gang war wreak havoc so he can swoop in as the mayor to make everything look better. This in combination with his anti-vigilante thing. It's, all really a tapestry that he's actually trying to let unfold and go in his favor. But as we know, Vanessa rather just really orchestrate the criminal element side of things a bit more tidier than just letting it all descend into chaos. And it did kind of make me chuckle a little bit because the shady Adam got brought up again because she views it as being punished or punishment for cheating on Fisk with this Adam guy. Are we ever going to see this Adam guy? Have we already seen him? Am I forgetting what he looks like? I don't know. Right now, it feels like almost too cookie-cutter formulaic in how Vanessa could end up betraying Wilson Fisk. I don't want to say that because it's like with the slow tensions, the slow differences in what they want to do and achieve, just seems like a natural story to where something like that go. You know what I mean? I hope that they subvert my expectations. But speaking of, we still have Fisk's knuckles still raw, being bruised and cut, and I love that little transition to Matt's knuckles after the previous episode's fight, just kind of symbolizing that they are slowly but surely both returning to form. This is when we have Officer Powell confront Matt after the fight at the end of last episode, threatening that the judge would, maybe be interested to hear that he's interfering with a police investigation. And I am really loving little scenes and tension of Matt's public life, even having issues like this in these episodes. I'm sure we're all here for the Daredevil stuff, but don't get me wrong, I love how this show shows his life as Matt Murdock, the lawyer, and how that's still pretty damn interesting to watch unfold as it dives into things like the corruption in the NYPD storyline, the gangs within, sometimes like these police things like the Punisher tattoos that we're seeing, and how that's going to continue this season. But this is where we obviously see Cherry in the safe house where the witness is staying, and Officer Powell in this moment takes the stand, and of course the prosecution goes with highlighting how, look how long he's worked for the NYPD, how much volunteering he's done, he's a decorated officer, and he goes on, of course, to lie about what happened at the train platform, which is when we now have Matt Murdock start to cross-examine him. And I really got a kick out of this, where it's like, I'm told you have a black eye. I hope everything is okay. The best cure for a black eye is fast hands. Oh man, it's just moments like this that really make me so over the moon that Charlie Cox is frickin' Matt Murdock, Daredevil. This is where things get pretty tense in the episode, with Cherry bringing Torres to court, and Cherry's van in this moment gets stopped. And am I remembering correctly? Was that Officer Powell? Of all people. If it was, that's kind of foolish. I mean, even if it wasn't, by the way, but I think it was. If it was any other cop, it's in broad daylight. What are they going to do in broad daylight? It looks kind of sketchy. The very guy, potentially, who was just on the stand, going after the very witness that was just brought up. I mean, that just kind of... Even if it's another police officer, it looks like, hey, yeah, no, maybe there is something larger to the corruption that's going on in the police force. But either way, Nikki Torres takes the stand, and he explains his backstory of how he's pinched for dealing, and he got out of the prison sentence because, maybe he could help out the cops as a confidential informant. So we get to that moment, and you see that all of the cops are just staring at Nicky, and he starts getting incredibly nervous, knowing that they've basically come for him or his family, and he says no, he was home all night. This is all quite a disaster, which leads the team to more or less have one approach left: to put Hector on the stand as he is, literally innocent, and hope that the jury sees him that way. And so when we see him on the stand, he talks about, oh man, this bit actually really got me. He talks about how that night he was on his way to his new place that he secured to move his family into after saving up all this time as a surprise to his wife, to finally have their own place. And this is where Matt kind of came out of left field being like, no, you put yourself in harm's way because you're a hero. And then he says, are you the vigilante known as White Tiger? And I was even kind of damn myself. It's a very risky move because it makes him a target forever. Enemies will now know, if he has made some enemies because he's stopped lots of crime, people will now go find his address, threaten his family, threaten him. Do you see what I mean? He will always be a target because White Tiger would have rubbed some people the wrong way, no matter what. So I'm not saying this is Matt Murdock's fault with what happens at the end of the episode, but knowing Matt Murdock, the character, I really hope and I really wonder with that ending that we're about to get to, if Matt will internally beat himself up a little bit about this. I get that he would have gone to prison if Matt didn't play this card, and that could have been very bad for him as well. Obviously, being labeled a cop killer, maybe having put some people in prison. And it's not like Matt Murdock could have seen what Fisk would have necessarily have done, but through doing this, it made Fisk kill him. Now, after initially getting told off by the judge, I really liked the next scenes, which picked up with Hector saying that Matt should have asked him first. And then we really just get a commentary about how being White Tiger is more than just putting on a suit. It's who he is. It's a calling. He didn't choose it. It chose him. If you might as well ask him to stop breathing if he were to give it up. Now, obviously, this relates to Matt Murdock, but in a bit of a different way. Even though he is at conflict with his Daredevil side and he's repressing it, actively repressing it, the irony of that description is that Matt is kind of almost struggling to breathe, not being Daredevil, especially the reason being in a city that throws problems in his face that requires the devil of Hell's Kitchen to solve. He's trying to do it the right way with regards to the law, the system, but that inner demon just keeps demanding to come out to really get the job done. Now, the next parts were great as well, because we have witnesses testify, which is, again, a smart move with the vigilante exposure play, because they testify White Tiger saves, which speaks volumes for his character, even positive comments from multiple police officer reports, which is a massive dunk on all of the cops who are against Hector here. One of them even saying that White Tiger even helped them arrest a suspect, and one of them, ladies and gentlemen, a really, really cool Easter egg here. And may I remind you, we are in the MCU. Surprise, surprise, but just bear that in mind. One of the officers who gave a positive report about White Tiger was Officer Morales, as in Miles Morales' dad. So, he's, Miles Morales' dad. You get the Easter egg. Now, I'm not saying that this means, oh my God, Miles Morales is going to be in Spider-Man 4, but it's just cool. I love little Easter eggs that technically do contribute to a larger world building, and who knows what the future holds, but cool little Easter egg there. Miles Morales' dad has run into White Tiger, and I just really felt like if you're a fan of the Matt Murdock lawyer stuff to the character of Daredevil, he was on a roll here, and it's hard to not enjoy this. Now, verdict time. In this very happy moment, the beautiful score kicking in, the acting, the relief on Hector's face, not just clearing his name for the people, but for his own family who was doubting him, his wife. I was like, is this really going to end this happy? Call this formulaic or whatever, but I saw the inbound sadness coming. So we had Matt Murdock leave the courtroom and whatnot, and we had a reporter say, how do you respond to Mayor Fisk calling you and all vigilantes cop killers? I was like, well, damn. We have a bit of a public battle now between Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk. Now, in this moment, we had Fisk watching on the TV. He asks for Daniel to arrange a meeting with BB. He doesn't want somewhere like the Times because maybe he feels like this could get out there a bit more in the new age of, obviously reaching people through different types of media outlets, which is absolutely a thing. So one thing people kept saying, and I completely agree, is like, yeah, how did Fisk get out of the situation he was in before? And this is insinuating like, juries get it wrong. I should know, so I guess somehow, like, even though they haven't properly got into it, Fisk was acquitted or something. I don't know. Now, while this is happening, we see Hector suit up again to Fisk's commentary, calling vigilantes cowards, not heroes. We have Matt having dinner with Heather, carrying on the O'Melvani's drinking tradition when winning a case, toasting to Foggy. And I was thinking in this moment, like, damn, Hector, like, knowing that the public knows who he is, wants to risk going out there again. I know what he said about, like, you may as well ask me to stop breathing, but it's still not exactly a great idea when he was told he could never do it again. But I guess maybe he thought that if he got away, he could be like, well, somebody else dressed up as White Tiger. You can't prove that was me. I don't know. And so right at the very end of the episode, ladies and gentlemen, Fisk says, I ran on a promise, and the acquittal of Hector Ayala demands that I keep it. And we see that White Tiger hears this woman in trouble, and this person comes out of nowhere and shoots him in the head. This is what I mean by Matt Murdock outing him. I know this wasn't like the Punisher himself. It was a police officer, so he could have got his address pretty easily. But, the fact that the identities were linked means that that Punisher gang member knew where to go. Simple as that. And this is just going to make Matt so mad. Like, surely he'll see beyond this just being a random killing, one that Fisk orchestrated. And then in the credits, oh man, again, as I said earlier, we hear Hector's Beach and the frog calls. And it's just so sad knowing that his family was going to be in that new home. And now, one thing, to be fair, that I couldn't really get out of my head is when you had White Tiger walking out there like that, if you already know people are coming after you, given that your identity is public, you're going to probably have those former officers or friends of them maybe out there to kill you. You wouldn't necessarily walk down the middle of the street, and I feel like you would stick to the shadows maybe. I don't know. And not only that, I do kind of feel like you would have noticed that guy under the street lamp, but, he kind of, didn't seem to notice him come right up to him, and this may come across as nitpicky, but I feel like they could have just given him a bit of a better death, maybe being overwhelmed, or maybe like I don't know, but it just did feel a bit kind of like, oh, as sad as it was at the same time. Let me know if you see kind of what I mean there. Like, he really didn't think about anything like this when going out there. Let me know what you guys think, but I am really excited to get into the next episode, because when you have episodes like this, which are kind of simmering some storylines on the back burner, like the Fisk thing, we only dabbled in that. Obviously, we didn't dabble so much into, the hero's journey part of Daredevil getting back into the suit, but this facilitated that in terms of how this will probably, in the wake of Hector's death, spur Matt Murdock to go into that direction even more. And for now, like, don't get me wrong, if they wait until episode 6, which I hope they're not going to do, but for now, I don't mind that they're building up to Daredevil instead of rushing into that, given the very powerful reason that Matt Murdock left it behind. For now, it kind of got us back into the Matt Murdock lawyer courtroom side of things. It still felt Daredevil to me. This makes me think of the larger pacing of the episode. I don't know about you guys, but for like the pacing of this courtroom drama unfolding, really, this episode, I know some people will say that they were like bored at points, maybe because, different strokes for different folks, but I was never like, I know, can we get on to the next bit now? Sometimes when you don't have the vigilante suit up in shows, you're like, okay, I tried to tune into this, but maybe I am losing interest a little bit. But I feel like this did cook things along nicely in that department. And I think this is also down to it being a very compelling story about Hector, White Tiger, the performances as well. From Charlie Cox, Camar de los Reyes as well. Like, this is what I meant in my first couple of episodes. I already had faith in the material that we were exploring this season, just in terms of the Daredevil story, the Matt Murdock story, even if you had issues with the pacing, the visuals, and stuff like that. And so when you also combine that with the cast that we've got, I still feel like this show, without, again, glazing, I'm not saying it's the best thing, and I had my own criticisms as well, but I do feel like it has more than what I think people are giving it credit for, if that makes sense. But please let me know if you disagree with me. I want to stress, that's not me saying this is Netflix level quality Daredevil, but after seeing a lot of reviews, I do think to myself, especially after watching episode 3, and I haven't really seen anyone else talk about episode 3 when I'm talking about this, I'm like, is this that bad? Am I crazy? I'd like to think I'm pretty critical. So, again, let me know what you're thinking about all of that stuff after watching this. And hopefully it just steps up again and again. And I've heard in those early reviews, obviously, that apparently it does get better and better and better and better. But let me know your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, down in the comments below. Would greatly appreciate a like on this video if you did enjoy it. One thing I do have to say, and I'm gutted to say this, like, don't get me wrong, I'm happy about going on honeymoon next week, but unfortunately, I won't be here to review episode 4, and then the week after that, they're dropping, I think, episode 5 and 6 at the same time, so I won't be there for that either. So trust me, like, I know I don't get a ton of views on Marvel stuff, but for those of you who are enjoying these videos and chats with me, I'll be back after that, because I leave on March 17th and I'm gone for like 11 days. So I hope some of you will be here to tune in when I get back. By the way, let me know your thoughts on episode 3. Do consider subscribing for more videos like this. And yes, more Daredevil reviews in the future. Who knows? Maybe we could talk about episode 4, 5, and 6 in a live stream. But until next time, I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you, fellow devils of Hell's Kitchen, in the next video. Goodbye.